Morning, everyone. Afternoon for some of you. I'm just going to wait for a few more people to get into the room. We apologize for the couple of moments late start, but parliamentary technology and commercial technology had a little bit of a challenge with each other. And I think we all suffered a minor challenge in this respect. So thank you all for joining us. It's welcome to see as many of you joining us as you are. In respect to those who have made it into the room and the fact that we have started a few minutes late, I'm going to start because the Minister has a limit on the time that he is able to spend with us today. I am Sharon Constanson, and good morning from the UK, and to many of you, I think it will be good afternoon at this point in time. Nice to see as many of you here with us. I'm chairman of the Council of Foreign Chambers and Foreign Chambers of Commerce, which is a body of about 20 or more chambers of commerce that have got their location in the UK from outside elsewhere in the world. This body has existed for about 4 decades in an informal fashion, and now for just over a year, we have existed as a formal body. And it's the power of the combined 20 plus chambers that enable us to have the likes of Minister Freer with us today. The event is going to be held under Chatham House rules, so please can I ask you to respect that. Business is opening up and we now have an opportunity to start trading with the marketplace and allow things to start to travel, people to travel. And we're going to be spending some time with the Minister and Valentina Romay, who's the economics reporter at the Financial Times. She writes a lot on export and on trade and on the general economy, which are issues that we actually need to be concerned about if we're to grow the UK economy in the way that is required post the Brexit environment. Our guest is Minister Mike Freer, Minister of Parliament and Minister for Exports. The UK Minister for Export is actually quite an important portfolio because this is what is going to generate a lot of our economy. He'll give us some insights on the priorities from the government, how they're going to get UK generating a degree of exports, and how that is going to work in a combined Brexit COVID environment, and how the UK is going to find the rest of the world. We're going to be with the Minister for about 30 minutes. We're then going to have some questions, so please place those in the Q&A function that we have. And those will be pulled together, collated, and asked of the Minister by Valentina. So I'm now going to hand over to Valentina, who is going to, in conversation, share some nuggets with us. Thank you very much.
As well, thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting event. Minister Freer, you've been appointed Minister for Export only quite recently. Can you tell us what would you like to achieve in your role?
Thanks, Valentina. I mean, yes, it's only month 5 since I was appointed. Clearly, one of the key objectives would be to exploit the opportunities of the new trade agreements and the ability to trade more freely with countries across the globe outside of the, if you like, the orbit of the EU. But that's not forgetting that we still have long established and valuable relationships in Europe. But clearly, if you look at where the growth is going to come in the next decade, there is definitely a tilt away from the more established markets on our doorstep to some of the more growth markets, particularly in the Asia Pacific. So that's obviously one of the key drivers, is to boost exports in those new growth markets. More locally, if you like, within the UK, there's 2 things I'd like to particularly focus on. One is to get more companies who could export, exporting. Only about 1 in 7, 1 in 10, depending on the figures you look at, of companies who could export choose to. And part of my job is to try and really get to grips with what is holding companies back from exporting, and then helping them take that first step to make their first export. Because once they've done it, hopefully they then get the bug and continue to go on, because we know that exporters tend to be more profitable, tend to be more innovative, they tend to have higher skilled jobs, and they tend to pay more, which then leads into the slightly broader policy is to support the levelling up agenda. As well as Minister for Exports, I'm also one of the Equalities Minister. And one of the things that I've asked the team to look for is that as we boost exports, I want to ensure that the benefits of exports is felt down to the shop floor, not just to the owner managers, but that the benefits of exports are felt down in people's pay packets. And I say that because I came myself from a poor background, and so I knew that when my parents had a bit more money, we ate better. If you have higher skilled jobs, then you tend to have a reason to stay on at school. So the virtuous circle of exporting means better paid jobs, higher skilled jobs, means people's life chances improve because people got a reason to stay on at school or they're living better. So alongside that, it's not just about getting the benefits down to the shop floor, it's also trying to ensure that the companies that are exporting are more diverse. So I want to drive to have more women in exports and more BME owned and managed companies involved in exports. So quite a broad topic, but also because my personal background is in sales, I kind of regard myself as chief salesman for UK PLC.
How are you planning to achieve those goals? Are there any specific initiatives to support, for example, women exporters? Well,
we're doing a piece of work. I mean, there's already various organisations that identify and support women in exports, but working with our team on the ground, which works into the broader support package, whether it's the Export Academy, our export champions, our international trade advisors out and about on the ground, working with our partners, whether it's the city mayors, the metro mayors, working with our own data, is to try and identify not just those companies that could export or have stopped exporting and we want to get them to restart again, but to try and identify those organisations that are, women-owned, women-led. Interestingly, next June, I'm leading an LGBT an outward-bound trade delegation into Texas. So we can try and identify it through a variety of sources, whether it's women, LGBT, BME, and then contact them proactively, hold their hand, encourage them, and see what they need to make that first step. Or if they're already exporting, is to try and work to make sure that they are more successful. One of the things I'm quite keen on this, where it'd be interesting to get the perspective of the members of the Chamber of Commerce, is working with some of our bigger companies, is to see what they can do with their supply chains. So when we're talking to some of our bigger exporters, is asking them what they can do to nurture, SMEs, women-owned businesses, et cetera, to kind of bring along and grow the women-owned and more diverse supply chain.
And talking about SMEs, we know that smaller companies are finding particularly difficult to trade in this environment. Do you have any specific initiative targeted at them?
Well, it depends on what the issue is. In terms of sometimes it could be that they've never done it, and so the internationalization fund, in terms of helping people learn how to use trade shows, are a big step forward of, if you like, breaking that barrier of being nervous. So once people have been to a trade show and exhibited, is understanding actually the benefit. And so there is a money available to help potential exporters put their toe in the water and see how it works, and hopefully then will then go on to do future trade shows. We have export champions, those people who have done the exporting, who are already active in the sphere, who can provide either case studies, just a mentoring system, or just give people reassurance that it's not as hard as people think. We have international trade advisors out on the ground who will hold the hand, if you like, of the potential exporter to help them through the learning curve. But also we launched the Export Support Scheme, which is both online and a telephone service for those exporters who have a query or who have encountered an issue of trading with Europe since the TCA was signed. And that actually is becoming increasingly busy, which is a good sign, because it means that people are starting to export more to Europe. But in addition, we will then turn the export support scheme away from just being a European focused helpline to being a global support system. So at the moment, lots of stuff on the ground, lots of stuff online that people need to dip in and out of, depending on where they are in the exporting journey.
Still, about half of UK exporters find additional paperwork a challenge to do trade, according to the latest ONS survey. Paperwork is a recurring issue for UK exporters. Do you have any measure targeted for that at helping with the paperwork?
Well, we do have the support on the ground that I've already mentioned, whether it's the Export Academy, the champions, the ITAs, the ESS, all of whom can talk businesses through what they need to do. One of the things we're working on, it's not going to be a quick fix, is the single trade window. What we're looking to do is, it's a piece of work where one of the problems we often hear from businesses is that when they talk to government, they continually have to keep giving us the same information time and time again. And one of the pieces of work we're doing is that you tell us once, and so next time you come to us, it will recognize you and pre-populate quite a lot of documentation. That's quite a big piece of work, and it's probably a little while away, but we're looking at practical support on the ground today, but also working on a slightly longer term project to make that paperwork as painless as possible and make it as digital as possible. So we're very conscious of the issue, but I think once people have done the paperwork once or twice, then I think sometimes it looks more daunting than it is. But I very much get the message, and we have got the support in place.
Global goods trade is doing pretty well, yet the UK export is about 20% down from pre-pandemic levels in real value. What do you think is happening?
Well, my understanding is that certainly on things like trade with the EU, it's up on last year by about £3 billion. The last data I saw is that the trade exports in goods is at 2018 levels. Services is taking a slow amount of time, it's a bit more slower to recover. That can be due to a number of factors, particularly the problems with international travel and tourism, which could be suppressing the services sector. And clearly, the pandemic has had a big impact on us. And we're also very conscious that the global supply chains have yet to fully recover. But that's not a particular UK phenomenon. But certainly the data I've also seen on inbound traffic from the EU is that it is at pre-pandemic levels. And also, I say the level of inquiries we're getting on our export support scheme would suggest that both sides of the equation, both imports and exports, would suggest that the economy is bouncing back quite nicely.
The DIT is also supporting foreign businesses invest in the UK. What are the key initiatives in that term?
That's not really my brief. That's Lord Grimston who handles inward investment. So I'm not sure I can answer that fairly for you. But I know Lord Grimston works very hard to ensure that the potential investors are tied up with whatever they need, whether it's land or other investors or technical expertise. Where my role comes in to support inward investment is the UK Export Finance Organisation comes under my portfolio, and any investor into the UK who may then be able to use their investment in the UK as a base for exporting, then UKEF would also look to get involved to see if there's any support they can give. So my bit of helping inward investment is where, if there's the opportunity to have that investment also provide an export base, is that I would help put them in contact with UKEF to see if they could help provide some finance as well. But the actual FDI piece is really Lord Grimston. I'm sorry to dodge that, but I don't want to give people wrong answers when it's not my portfolio.
Absolutely. In the FT annual survey of economists, many express the concern that the UK economy will underperform other major advanced economies because of a weaker export performance. Do you share their concern?
No, no, I don't. I have to say that the data I've got is that we are performing well. And although I've only been in post for 5 months, all of the overseas markets that I've visited are very, very open for UK exports. I've been genuinely surprised at how good the UK is in so many, many sectors. The British products are valued, they're regarded as a quality product, we're a trusted partner, and we are very good at so many things. The one thing we're not very good at is telling anybody about it. And so part of my job is to, when I go out, not just in the UK, is to say there is a global market that wants to buy British. So I don't accept that we are going to underperform. All the evidence I've seen is that as the global economy recovers, if we can get our companies to go out there and export, there are people wanting to buy their products.
And you mentioned trade agreement with non-EU country, and we saw that the UK is in talk with India, and it's a fast-growing market, so the ideal for trade development. Yet Germany export about twice as much as the UK to India. Does this raise concern about the DIT strategy?
Well, I'm not sure why it would be a concern of a strategy. I mean, obviously, history is what it is in terms of, without unpicking what Germany exports to India, that data I don't have. I think we'd have to understand what India is buying from Germany to see whether that's a product that we can also supply, and whether that we've been uncompetitive, or maybe it's a product where, or sectors where Germany has particular strengths. So without understanding the exact exports that Germany is outperforming us on, it's quite difficult to answer. What I do know is that the potential within India, I think, is significant. A long history between our two countries, and I think one of the issues perhaps is that we've not paid it enough attention. I mean, one of the issues that I think that we face is that whilst we've had a strong market on our doorsteps, perhaps we haven't in the past focused enough on global exports. And I think that's being addressed by the new focus from the Prime Minister post-Brexit. So yes, in many markets, other competitors will outperform, but that necessarily doesn't mean that we can't up our game and close the gap. It can be for a variety of reasons.
And obviously, outside the EU, the UK, it is a smaller trading partner. Do you find that the UK is at the back of the queue when, in your initiative, when you visit a foreign trading partner?
No.
The appeal is still there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I visited, I think, 7 or 8 overseas markets in the last 5 months, and I've not got any impression that we are somehow at the back of the queue. In many ways, we are, up front and in centre. Yes, the EU can have a larger consumer base, but there are sometimes obstacles to trading with the EU. I don't want to reopen the whole Brexit debate, but yes, the EU is a large market. But in some ways it can be a bit of a behemoth, and sometimes it can be a bit sluggish, and sometimes can take an awful long time to sign trade deals. And yes, whilst the EU is large, and of course individual countries within the EU may have different approaches to those particular markets. We remain a large market. We are a big economy and offer a great deal of flexibility and nimbleness in terms of our trade deals. So yes, obviously the EU is a big competitor, but I don't find any evidence that certainly when I'm out, or when the Secretary of State out is doing trade deals, that we are in somehow regarded as a second-class trading partner.
And so more generally, what are the commercial priorities of the DIT, and both in terms of sectors and in terms of markets?
Well, if you look at, obviously the Prime Minister has given a very, very clear direction that he wants the UK to continue to lead on renewables, on green energy. We're clearly leading on many aspects of electric vehicles, but equally some of our strengths in terms of agri-tech, food and beverage, fintech. So there are some key markets where we already have some historic strengths, which we will continue to capitalize on, but equally in some of the emerging sectors where we have at a quite a short period of time been able to go forward. Carbon capture, as I say, renewable energy. Can't even say the word. Sorry, renewable energy. Electric vehicles. Huge strides forward over the past few years, which are putting us at the front, if you like, on the export market for those new sectors. So I would say that we will continue to build on our strengths, but equally, the key sector that the PM has already said is on clean energy and green technology.
What about in terms of countries?
Well, clearly, if you look at the data that 60% of the world's middle classes will be in Asia Pacific within the next 10 years, and all the data is showing that's largely where most of the economic growth will be coming, then clearly our export strategy is to, as an Asia Pacific tilt. But as a former salesman, I'm very conscious that we also do have to ensure that we look after our existing customers. So I don't propose that we ignore and neglect our European partners, but equally a lot of emphasis will be on those growth markets in Asia Pacific.
What about China? China is rising very steadily as a source of imports to the UK. Is there any concern in the stronger relationship with China?
Well, the government's been very clear that China remains a trading partner. We have no plans for an FTA with China, but our relationship with China will be one that is very pragmatic, but equally one that we have our eyes open as to the challenges of dealing with China. So yes, it's a big trading partner, but it's not one that we plan to have an FTA with, and it's not one that we are blind to the pitfalls of trading with.
Last October, the UK signed closer collaboration with Greece and with Italy in order to boost trade and investment. Is this a way to boost export with the EU after Brexit? Should we expect more of these agreements?
I think those particular agreements I can't comment on, but I can tell you that I am paying increasing attention to our European markets, and I don't see that, there will always be some tensions within the various partners within the EU as we have disagreements over various things, but I regard them more as a family dispute, and I don't think that we would regard them as a fundamental rupture. And so my job will be to ensure that the relationship we have, as you say, with Italy, or it might be with the Netherlands, or it might be with Hungary, we will continue to engage with our partners and continue to trade with them. And some countries will regard our approaches warmly, and others will be more sceptical. I take that as read as post-Brexit, but I don't see that just because we're outside of the EU, it doesn't mean that we can't continue to trade and continue to have those strong working relationships. The problem with the whole Brexit debate is everyone seemed to think it was all or nothing, and in my view, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, certainly, to have a big market on our doorstep, we've had the Brexit debate, but it doesn't mean that we should simply walk away. As the saying goes, we've left the EU, we've not left Europe, and so I intend to spend time going around our European markets, reiterating that we are open for mutual business.
We talk a little bit about goods export, and you talk about sectors. They are mostly goods, but nearly half of UK export is services. Do you have any specific initiative to promote services export for the UK?
Well, I mean, the service sector, obviously will continue to benefit from all the activities that we're doing. So, I'm talking to my colleagues in the Treasury who are responsible for exports for financial services to make sure that we ensure that they are invigorated to continue to support the financial services sector. We have very strong trade advisory groups, strategic trade advisory groups in the service sector, and we will continue to work with those sectors. Where they feel there are barriers, then we will continue to work with them. Certainly when I go overseas, if we find there are barriers to trade, whether it might be, for instance, in education exports, if we find that there is barrier toward recognition of professional standards, then we will work on that to try and have those barriers removed. And so all of the support we have on the ground, whether it's goods or services, is the same. But when I go out and I will look at, one of the pieces of work I'm doing is looking at particular sectors where I think that we need to give some particular emphasis. If it's gone off the boil, as understanding why has it gone off the boil? Is it just a bit of sentiment, or is there a deep-rooted barrier? And then see what I can do and look at those markets where we can unlock growth by giving some face-to-face attention with my counterparts in those particular markets. So I've been doing, when I've been out, say, for instance, in the UAE, is talking about some professional standards, because education exports, for instance, in the Gulf states is important. And from the UAE, talking to other partners in the GCC about professional standards. So wherever the barrier is on services, I will look to address it. But equally, as we open up the economy and we see people coming back into the UK, then I see services will pick up, because it's not all a function of being outward bound. Some of it will be because of international travel and tourism. So I think it's a double-edged, it's two sides of that coin. But I'm very conscious of it. And where, if our sector teams come to me with a specific barrier, then I will go and work on it. Okay,
my very last question, because then we have a question from the audience. This new trade agreements have raised concerns about quality standards and increased competition for UK producers. So what's your view on that?
Well, competition's good. It's a strange argument for, if we want people to buy our product, if we want people to, if we want to be a trading nation, then we have to accept that there's competition. We can't say, well, actually, we want people to buy our goods, come what may. If we're traders, if we are selling things, then we have to accept it is a global market. And I don't think that competition necessarily is always a drive to the bottom. In fact, one of the things I think where we have a huge opportunity is actually British products are known for their quality. And so, if everybody wanted a cheap product, then we'd all be buying Trabant cars, if they're even still in production. But if you look at the car market, if everything was just about price, we'd all be buying the cheapest model. But it isn't. People are willing to pay for different products that offer something different or a different quality. So I don't see it as a bad thing. Plus, competition means that our businesses have to keep on their toes to make sure that their products are relevant, their products are meeting the market needs, and also that they are competitive. So I don't think competition is a bad thing. In terms of quality, again, I think some of the fears I understand, but I'm not sure that they are going to come to pass. If you look at the protections we built into the Australia FTA, but then also if you look at things on New Zealand lamb and Australian meat, some of our sectors are very concerned that the UK market will be flooded. Again, we just don't think that's likely to happen, because New Zealand and Australia have a market on their doorstep which are paying much more than we would pay. The Asian market pays premium prices for meat. And so New Zealand and Australia are not using their existing quotas with the UK, let alone post-FTA. So I think sometimes I understand the nervousness, but I'm not sure that it's going to be a race to the bottom. Plus, we are not prepared to, sacrifice our standards on things like, animal welfare. So I understand the concerns. I'm just not convinced they're going to come to pass.
Thank you. And I'm going to combine now a couple of questions. In terms of, we talk about Asia, the focus moving into Asia Pacific, because it's a fast-growing region, economically speaking. But someone asked, what about Latin America, where the UK lags behind other competitors? What about the Commonwealth?
Okay, two parts. I think the Commonwealth we're addressing through our activities, obviously done New Zealand, Australia, working on India, working through on other countries that are in the Commonwealth. But I don't think we can just say, well, you used to be you're in the Commonwealth, therefore let's just pick up where we left off. I think life's moved on and we have to ensure that we respect our trading partners. But obviously the Commonwealth gives us a lot of shared history and shared values that we can build on. But in terms of Latin America, I think that's an absolutely fair criticism. I think we are behind in Latin America. I'll use the term Latin America to include Central America. I've already been out to Peru and Panama. I've got visits to Ecuador, Bolivia coming up, and other parts of South America in the next 3 or 4 months. And I think it's true that we have perhaps neglected the sector. We have very strong teams there, but it's not had the attention that I think that it perhaps deserves. And that's one of the things I'm addressing through my own trade visits and those from my colleagues. It's also about understanding what works for the market. I'm very keen not that we just have a one size fits all. Here's our UK exports, take it or leave it. I do think it's important that we understand the local markets. And so in Peru, our big strength in Peru has been working with the government to government model, particularly on infrastructure and on added value. And I think that we need to understand what our partners there would want from us and tailor our response. And I do think with the attention that I'm about to provide it, with the attention from the team, we can start to close that gap. But I think it's a very, very fair criticism.
Another question is, how do you see green finance supporting our green agenda on exports?
Could you be more specific as to which elements of green finance?
I will have to go back to you on that question.
I can tell you what UK Export Finance does is obviously we no longer support, if you like, what we would call dirty energy, for want of a clumsy term. There is an argument to supporting, in some circumstances, quite narrow circumstances, projects that help sectors transition away from, if you like, the carbon intensive industries. But most of our support on UKEF will be for the new clean energy. And so there's a lot of work going in, for instance, to pick on one sector onto hydrogen or carbon capture. But if anyone has a specific question on particular green finance, come back to me.
And how do you see, another question is, how do you see the role with China in AIIB?
Sorry, could you tell me AIIB?
Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think what we're finding alongside China is that many of the countries that have, if you like, borrowed from China or taken infrastructure support are now regretting it because of either the cost or, if you like, the foreclosure process. And what we're finding now is that there is the opportunity for the UK, for instance, through UK Export Finance, and through our other investment bodies, to replace Chinese money, or at least where there is an opportunity that we are getting a better hearing because countries are more skeptical now of the strings attached to Chinese finance. Not sure if that answers the question, but clearly if anyone has a more technical question, very happy for people to email me and I'll get them a more technical answer.
And I'm very glad to read that there are questions about Africa, your strategy in Africa, because I was very surprised that it was not mentioned as the fastest growing population continent and is rising also in terms of economic. Yep,
so in fact, I've got a call this week with the Africa Investment Bank and also our Trade Commissioner who covers Africa is very active. We know there is a huge amount of opportunity for us. I'm going out to Africa later this year before July. So it is an important geographic market for us. We're already active in the market. and we will be boosting our presence on the ground through our organisation, whether it's through the FCDO or DIT people. I keep getting told off for calling it DIT, DIT, people on the ground, to make sure that we have the people on the ground to provide support for exporters, but also here in the UK, various initiatives to raise awareness of the opportunities for exporters in Africa. So spot on, a massive market which we are aware of and working on.
But do you have any specific countries in mind there?
I don't, but again, it would depend on the particular sector. I know something like agri-tech. So I think I'm going to Nigeria later this year, but I wouldn't want to say we have any specific countries. If an exporter has a country in mind, then they need to approach us and we will do what we can to provide them with access to that particular market. But in terms, I don't want to rank particular countries in Africa as where we would focus. At this point, I think that the whole of Africa is an opportunity, and exporters should get in contact with them. We'll put them in contact with the right people overseas to help them develop the market they want to get into.
I think if I can ask the very last question, because I think you have to leave. What about in terms of leveling up? Because you mentioned that that's an objective of that you have in terms of trade, in terms of export strategy. How do you achieve that? Because most exporters are based in the Southeast and London.
Well, actually, about 73% of exports are outside of London and Southeast. But there are certain parts of the country where clearly exports lag behind. So the international trade advisors are regionally based. We're working very closely with the city mayors and the metro mayors. So, for instance, doing a lot of work in West Yorkshire, in Birmingham, in Manchester, Liverpool, and up with our partners in both the devolved assemblies of Scotland and Wales, to put people on the ground. So, we do have offices in Edinburgh, in Darlington, and so on, to make sure that we've got people on the ground who can go out and talk to potential exporters. Various initiatives on the ground, whether it's the Export Academy. I'm looking at the International Trade Show program as to whether we can make it more attractive or raise awareness in those bits of the country that are not exporting, where we think they could be. So there can be a variety of reasons as to why particular regions are lagging behind, but we're putting the resource in both in terms of the physical presence of DIT, the physical presence of our support network, but more importantly, is working quite closely with our partners in the mayoralties across the UK to target local businesses. And you'll hear more from that from the Levelling Up paper, white paper, which Michael Gove should be launching in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much, Minister Freer. I think the word is back to Verena for the concluding remark, and thank you for the audience.
Could I just say, if anyone didn't get to ask a question, they're more than happy to email me, and I will very happily answer them, especially if they're having technical questions that were slightly outside my brief that I dodged, that I will do my best to get people a technical answer.
Thank you very much, sir. A special thank to our distinguished speaker, the UK Minister for Exports, Mike Freer, and to Valentina Romei, economics reporter at the Financial Times, for moderating the event. It was a real honor for the Italian Chamber of Commerce to host today's initiative, and we look forward to attending the next CFCC event. I hope to see you all again soon, and I wish you a lovely rest of the day. Goodbye.
Just people want my email address, they can get me through. Probably the best one is Elliot still on the call?
Yes.
Elliot, if you can unmute, and could you just read out the best email address for contact? Because I tend not to email myself.
Absolutely, Minister. I'll put it into the chat so everyone can see it there.
Okay. Thank you.
We will leave the this event, online event, going on for another minute, so everyone can.
I'll leave and leave Elliot to put that into the chat room. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. yes, just to make sure that you can all write down the email address, and then we will say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us today.